Wow, this is amazing to be here in El Salvador. My name is Ryan MacLeod, and this is my wife, Heidi. And we've come here today to discuss with you about the idea of the nuclear power industry adopting Bitcoin and what that might look like. Yeah, although El Salvador doesn't have nuclear power just yet, that may change someday. And now, what qualifies us to do this? Nothing really. We're not nuclear engineers, coders, electricians, or cypherpunks.
Nobody really.
Yeah, we're here simply to advocate for two technologies that, when combined, could solve many of the challenges that humanity faces. We are confident that Bitcoin mining and nuclear power are those technologies. Now, I've learned a lot about Bitcoin in the last 2 years, from the books, the podcasts, the essays, all of the content.
And I've gotten to hear all about it. If you know, live with a Bitcoiner, you know what I mean. But I've also gotten to look into it. I understand it, I get it, I fully support it. I know all the slang, buy the dip, don't believe the FUD, all that kind of stuff. So with that, we come here, we happen to work in the Canadian nuclear industry, but we are not here on behalf of them today. We're here to explore an idea that Ryan has become fixated upon, an idea to use Bitcoin mining as a tool to advance the deployment and development of clean, abundant, reliable energy in the form of small modular reactors, or SMRs for short.
Yeah, that's because reliable electricity is incredibly important, as it's what allows societies to thrive. Societies that have low-cost, reliable energy have much higher standards of living compared to those that have expensive and unreliable electricity. We can see it happening right now all over the world. Places in Europe are hoarding wood and trash to heat their homes this winter. Fines are being issued for setting your thermostats too high. Blackouts are now common occurrences where they weren't even just a few years ago. Yeah, and then as energy demands continue to grow and developing nations increasingly industrialize, it is imperative that we take advantage of all of the available technologies that we have to combat these issues. By leveraging Bitcoin mining, we can enable small modular reactors and nuclear power in general to bring more abundant and reliable energy to more places around the globe. They do this basically by resolving a major economic liability that nuclear power suffers from, that sometimes they work too well and generate too much electricity when there's nobody to pay for it. And then on the Bitcoin side, by embracing nuclear power, that will eliminate many of the doubts related to its energy use.
Yeah, so let's talk about nuclear first. There are 438 reactors operating in 33 countries around the world today. Since the first reactors came online over 7 decades ago, they have been providing reliable power to billions of people around the world, creating millions of jobs, both direct and indirect to nuclear. The most decarbonized grids of the world have done so through a combination powered almost entirely by nuclear and hydro. Now, admittedly, it does have a complicated history, which may make some hesitant to engage with this technology. Sensational accidents, long-lived waste, significant cost, build time overruns, weapons uses, and a very determined anti-nuclear advocacy.
Yes, but we'd like to assure you that nuclear power is actually the safest, cleanest, and most reliable source of energy that humanity is capable of harnessing at this point.
So far.
So far. And that nuclear waste is actually one of the most safely stored and well-managed industrial byproducts of any industry. Modern fuel fabrication techniques will remove the risk of weapons proliferation while enabling the recycling and reuse of spent nuclear fuel from traditional reactors. Repeat construction will significantly lower the build times of various units, as well as the cost of each successive unit. And then recent events have also greatly renewed an interest in nuclear power as a means to reduce emissions and get reliable electricity.
It's a good thing. So we come here from Canada. So this next section is probably going to sound a little bit like an infomercial for the Canadian nuclear industry, but that's because we would like to see Canada remain a global leader at the cutting edge of the nuclear sector. So Canada is a tier 1 nuclear state, and that means that as a nation, we possess expertise across the full nuclear supply chain, including regulation, mining, reactor design, plant construction, also including things like operations and maintenance, waste management, decommissioning, environmental remediation. There's research and development, and of course, very important, the medical isotope production. So as you can see, there's a lot.
Yes. And then the CANDU reactor, built and designed in Canada, is considered one of the safest nuclear reactor designs on the global market, which is disappointing that they're not building anymore, but it is what it is.
New technologies.
They have operating units in 7 countries, including one in Argentina, and they also supply the CANDU technology also supplies the cobalt-60 used to sterilize at least 40% of the world's single-use medical devices. And then currently in Ontario, there are 10 reactors undergoing refurbishment that will extend their life well into the 2060s. And this will also serve to ensure that Canada retains a strong, functional nuclear supply chain, as well as many, many reliable career opportunities in the nuclear sector. And then today, while some countries opt to build the large familiar reactors, Canada has decided to pursue something a bit smaller.
Today, through the SMR Action Plan and Roadmap, Canada is evaluating the technological readiness of 12 proposed nuclear reactors for this. They will significantly lower costs and regulatory barriers, enabling non-nuclear nations to reap the benefits that nuclear power provides. They are intended for use both domestically and for international export. So, a little bit about SMRs. They present a promising new energy source, abundant, reliable, and non-emission that can apply to a vast array of applications. They are designed to be built in factories and shipped to site for installation using standard transportation methods. They present a wide range of benefits, including, as we've already said, lower cost per unit, faster construction. There's also fuel recycling, site flexibility. Optimized integration with renewables is a large one as well. Along with that, there's also medical isotope production. Oh, and new R&D opportunities,
Lots
of
of
course.
new R&D. Yeah. Currently, there are 3 streams being pursued in the SMR category. The first being large grid-scale reactors, with the first demonstration unit expected to be built at the Darlington site in Ontario in 2028, and that will be a scaled-down version of GE Hitachi's boiled water reactor design. And then the second stream are advanced reactors that will employ novel features that will enable the reuse of spent fuel from traditional reactors. The Moltex's 300 megawatt stable salt waste burner and ARC Clean Energy's 100 megawatt sodium cooled fast reactor are the ones in this category. And then the ones that we are the most interested in are the micro modular reactors, designed for off-grid communities and remote mineral extraction operations. Yes, the first one that is expected to be demonstrated in Canada at the site that we work at in Canadian Nuclear Laboratories by 2027. And then another one by Westinghouse will be built sometime shortly afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Canada intends to demonstrate at least 6 new reactor designs starting in 2027, and then deploy follow-up units to support various industrial applications. And then by 2030, the plan is to have several of these designs ready for commercial deployment and international export. The range of outputs and costs opens up new market opportunities for nuclear power that were formerly restricted to areas with large demand and significant long-term capital.
So Canada also promotes a world-leading nuclear regulatory framework with a focus on health and safety for the public and the environment, while ensuring reasonable costs and timelines for the SMR licensing approvals. All proposed designs are under consideration by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's Vendor Design Review. And the CNSC is also in collaboration with the IAEA and the US's Nuclear Regulatory Commission in enabling non-nuclear nations to develop their own nuclear framework for their policies and agencies. We also have a very robust radioactive waste framework, and as we know, that is very important. They continue to modernize this policy for waste from both existing and new reactor technologies. This includes innovations in the development of good waste storage facilities, such as the near-surface disposal facility for low-level waste, a deep geological repository for high-level waste, and facilities for the reprocessing of spent fuel that will be used in some new advanced reactors.
Yeah, and with safety and waste well addressed and continually improving, that leaves mostly the economic case to be addressed. Because the economic viability of a nuclear power project, big or small, is heavily dependent upon the demands of the local communities and grids. Considering a 40-plus year investment, the costs of capital could make or break the feasibility of a project like this. By ensuring certainty in recouping that revenue, that will significantly increase the availability of deployment opportunities. They require significant demand and long-term power purchase agreements in order to justify building these facilities. Did you show the Hinkley slide?
I did, yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
too fast.
You went too quick.
Amateurs.
Yeah. This chart right here is actually the cost breakdown of the Hinkley Point C reactor that's being built in the UK right now. As you can see, 2/3 of that is just interest. So, like, any means to reduce the cost of capital and recoup that return on investment sooner will have dramatic compounding effects on the lifetime economics of a nuclear reactor project. Because surplus baseload generation is a massive liability that results in billions of lost revenue that could otherwise be used to invest in upgrading infrastructure, lowering costs to ratepayers, or lowering taxes. Yeah, and this affects the SMRs in two different ways because the vendors that are building the SMRs need to have sufficient market demand for their reactors, and then the operators of the reactors need to have sufficient local electricity demands to justify building these facilities.
If only there was a technology that could capture this surplus when and where it occurs. And what if there was a set of emerging technologies that, when combined, could not only provide that clean, abundant, reliable energy, but also create a store of wealth for all people, especially in remote communities, while at the same time creating a new monetization opportunity with vast array of applications.
Yes.
So you know where this is going.
Bitcoin fixes this, obviously, because Bitcoin mining is the ideal technology as it presents a highly flexible market that will enable power asset owners to monetize their full output 24/7 from the moment that they turn on, regardless of the local supply and demand conditions. And then Bitcoin mining is also the perfect technology to operate as a demand response technology.
So demand response is a grid-based solution that employs flexible energy consumers to promote power utilities to reliably support the peak electricity and heating needs of a community while minimizing those economic losses caused by curtailment.
Yeah. There are several other technologies that have been and are considered to be used as demand response technologies, such as chemical production for hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, desalination, storage techniques, smart homes, various industrial applications such as aluminum smelting, steel smelting, pulp and paper mills. They all possess at least some of these properties that we're going to list off next. They have a rapid response to real-time grid fluctuations. They can be co-located at or near a generation source. They're highly interruptible. They can match even the most extreme demand events. They have a small physical footprint, and they have minimal storage and transport constraints for their feedstock and final products. Bitcoin mining is superior in just about every category, positioning it as the optimal anchor tenant for just about any power project. Yeah, and this is a slide from Lancium just showing how they have been using the Bitcoin mining to follow grid signals.
So, as many of you know, but for those who don't, miners are highly interruptible, and they can follow real-time grid signals to operate anywhere from 100% to 0%, anywhere in between with minimal risk to hardware damage. They can be located anywhere an energy source can be harnessed, creating opportunities to develop and monetize stranded energy assets. They can be configured to perfectly complement any generation profile. They consume massive amounts of energy relative to the land required to do so. The product itself of Bitcoin mining is entirely digital, so it has no storage or transportation constraints. Even electricity has transmission constraints. And finally, the product Bitcoin can then be used globally at near zero cost anywhere that accepts Bitcoin as payment.
Yes. And then this is a chart that I made. Please go back.
Sorry.
It just shows that by monetizing the full output of a power project can bring the return on investment much sooner in time and dramatically increase the revenue. Yes, I did do it when the hash price was still up around 14 cents a kilowatt, but yeah, this is going to be constantly fluctuating. And then, next slide, please. Yes, here is an example from a community that is being considered for SMR deployments. This chart shows 1 year of power use in Iqaluit, Nunavut, in northern Canada, like very far northern Canada. As you can see, it has a maximum of about 30 megawatts and a minimum of about 7 megawatts and for a full range of about 23. Basically meaning that 30 megawatts must be installed and available at any given time. Typically, this would be served by a series of diesel generators, some acting as base load, while others would be operating as peaker plants. But then in an SMR category scenario, the several units would be configured as modules to add up to 30 megawatts. But turning off those units presents an opportunity cost where the operators could be earning revenue from an alternative market during those periods of low demand. And Bitcoin miners could be that market. They can be configured to be perfectly matched for this or any generation profile and capturing the maximum utility of any energy asset. And then as a bonus, in that scenario in northern Canada, that energy can also be double spent to be used for various heating applications at residential, commercial scales, hotels, hospitals, greenhouses, pools, you name it. We can get awfully creative with this stuff.
It's something to look forward to for sure. So this chart here shows a powerful combination. Now, we know that these technologies are not without the challenges, but we believe that together they can actually resolve many of the shortcomings faced by each. So we've mentioned a little bit about the costs, offset, things like that. There's a lot of course, debate around what kind of energy does Bitcoin use? Is it clean? All those things. Well, essentially, Bitcoin mining is as clean and green as the energy that powers it. So, like I said, there's a few on here. I'm sure that there are many that we have missed that are going to be coming in future. So yeah, just our legacy and waste is now able to be recycled and whatnot. And during those processes, using Bitcoin in order to reap those curtailment problems is a really good thing.
Yes, and before you move on, I just want to add, there's one that's not on here that I had been thinking about quite a bit, that if the incentive is strong enough to use nuclear power assets to mine Bitcoin, that would be, if it's a strong enough incentive, it could be a significant deterrent to directing that nuclear fuel towards nuclear weapons operations. And then if the incentives are even stronger, maybe someday they would incentivize the deproliferation of nuclear weapons to use them for power generation.
Absolutely. So aside from the economic reasons to pair these together, there are other areas of concern that can be addressed by it. Now, stay with me here. Applying these to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, regardless of feelings on the UN, the goals are something I'm sure we can all agree we can work towards, but in our own ways. So with that, I think this dynamic duo can resolve many, if not all, by positive ripple effect.
Yes, we can certainly solve many of these goals in our own unique roundabout way without the UN. Because we've already explored how reducing the cost of SMRs will result in much faster deployment of affordable and clean energy. We'll also bolster the public and private confidence for investment, lowering capital costs, and prompting increased investment in innovation, in industry, infrastructure, and innovation. By Bitcoin mining can ensure that energy assets can employ a reliably interruptible consumer to maximize revenue and grid stability. And it may also enable more small modular reactors and nuclear reactor designs to be brought to the market. And then for more infrastructure, reliable internet and digital security are also very important to both miners and SMRs, so every deployment will accompany improved internet access for the host communities.
Absolutely. To achieve these goals, promoting the availability of quality education is essential. Reliable power and global connectivity will enable residents anywhere access to a vast array of educational resources online. These cutting-edge technologies are going to attract new talent and create new opportunities in developing markets, including general labor, skilled trades, engineering professionals, and everything around and in between. So with the development of this magnitude, it will distribute the potential for economic growth in many different jurisdictions. So looking at other ones like poverty, hunger, clean water, and sanitation, the availability, as we've said throughout this, of low-cost, non-emitting energy, it's a prerequisite for ending poverty. Energy enables the development of clean water and sanitation resources, combined with the capability to locally grow produce year-round, regardless of the climate, and in Canada, that's a big deal. This is going to allow communities to experience reduced hunger and improved health and well-being. So with poverty, hunger, better health, and access to education, all dramatically improved, each individual will be empowered to pursue what is most meaningful to them.
Yes, and also by enabling the early development of the predicted future energy needs of a community, it can encourage organic growth, with local priorities under consideration. It will also ensure that development is not hurried to fill that energy demand, reducing the amount of misallocated capital while promoting sustainable growth strategies. And then by promoting sustainable growth strategies, that will promote responsible consumption and production practices that are mindful of long-term environmental and social and concerns in developing communities. And then also by getting more power from nuclear and less from hydrocarbon-based sources, that will lower the cost of those hydrocarbons, such as natural gas, methane, and diesel, that would be better suited for operations such as like chemical production and fertilizer production and operating heavy machinery that is difficult to electrify.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then landfill emissions and livestock refuse and cooking oil and flared gas. These waste and pollution streams are now being monetized, incentivizing us to find similar opportunities anywhere, protecting life on land and water. Then by adding value to responsibly reducing waste and pollution, Bitcoin is an effective climate action tool. By enabling SMRs that will allow power to be generated for communities that use far less land and materials, because alternative technologies can use as much as 75 times the land space and much more material to get a comparable output. And then SMRs are being recognized by climate and energy experts alike as a game-changing solution.
So that brings us to the last ones. So building trust with our local stakeholders is a critical factor in the successful engagement with these goals. Fostering strong relationships between nation-states, local communities, industry stakeholders, Indigenous peoples, Bitcoin miners, public officials, and entrepreneurs will form long-lasting, mutually beneficial partnerships built on a foundation of trust, respect, and shared values. And of course, having a neutral, decentralized global money enables commerce around the world without trusted third parties for payment processing, custody solutions, and transnational remittances. These capabilities are all strengthened by integrating the Bitcoin network with small modular reactors.
Yes, and we barely scratched the surface of what could be capable in the future. Like, there are countless new technologies being built, and we've been hearing about them all day, today and yesterday, that are becoming a reality faster than any of us could have imagined. Like community banks using Fedimints, or Synoda enabling the ability to pay utilities in real time, or the possibility of physical supply chains being linked by lightning channels. Like, there's limitless potential with this combination. And by combining small modular reactors with Bitcoin mining, it'll allow communities and industries to generate revenue immediately with minimal grid infrastructure. And then as development progresses and the demands evolved, these operations can be adjusted to suit the needs of that community. And it opens up many opportunities for remote locations to engage in global commerce Yeah, using a low emissions, game-changing energy technology.
We invite you all to look further into these technologies and how, when integrated, could be far more impactful than initially thought. So,
Yes.
small modular reactors and Bitcoin.
Yes, a powerful combination.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for listening.
I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but if anyone has a couple of questions, we can probably take those.
You got a few minutes?
Sure, in the back.
What's the supply like for like the fuel used in these reactors? Say if other countries are going on these reactor type projects, is there enough supply for that fuel? I know I've heard that before and I haven't vetted it myself, but what's your take on that?
Oh, there is a lot of available uranium, and just in Canada alone, if the will was there, they could easily double the global supply of uranium pretty quickly. And then Australia has lots of uranium. There's lots of uranium available throughout Africa, South America, like Russia and Kazakhstan. And then there's also the potential to use thorium as a fuel source. And then being able to recycle fuel will get like as much as, I think it was, so traditional fuel only gets about 15 to 20% of the available energy out of the fuel bundles. So by recycling that and reusing it in other reactors, they can bump that up to almost like 80 to 90% and get a lot more bang for their buck.
Thank you for your question. Yes, at the back.
Yeah, how much and how soon can you deliver?
So the first reactors are meant to be built. So the first demonstration reactor, of course, we want to make sure it works and it has all the benefits that we've said it will provide. We're hoping to break ground at Canadian Nuclear Laboratories at the Chalk River site probably by 2026, with demonstration beginning by 2027.
Yes. My goal is to have Bitcoin mining as part of that demonstration
That's right.
operation so that they can prove that it works, and then when the deployments start, they will already have a framework for deploying these as a pair, essentially. We'll be able to deploy nuclear reactors with a built-in customer. So regardless of the local demand, they'll be able to sustain that. And then, yeah, so various reactors have various timelines. Like the one we talk about at CNL, that's going to be 2027. The one, the grid scale one's going to be about 2028. The advanced reactors are looking more in the early 30s. So this is definitely a long-term project. But there is a lot of potential in these reactors, and seeing the conditions of the energy markets these days, nuclear power is going to be playing a big role going forward in the future, especially in regards to emission reductions and energy reliability. So.
And just to add to that, I think what we've seen in the Bitcoin community as well shows us that 10 years can go by pretty fast, and the advancements within it can be pretty great. So I think your hand was up first. Okay, next. Yes?
The graph you showed for the minimum humidity projection, was that for the electric heating use, was that taking into account heat pumps, or was that just assuming pure electric?
That's both the combination of just using the diesel straight for heat and electrical heating. It's yeah.
I'll also go comment on it was also possible to use Bitcoin mining in middle winter for heat production too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the climate is definitely a consideration. Like in the north, you can reuse that heat, but then like here in El Salvador, you need to dissipate that heat somehow. So there's different challenges in different climates, but yeah, you can. I mentioned at one point that you can essentially double spend that electricity and by using it for heating operations.
Yeah, and just as like a personal note, where we live, it's very cold most of the time of the year, and we have a couple of Bitcoin miners. I call them smart heaters because regular space heaters are kind of dumb. They don't make money. They don't promote to the Bitcoin network. So that's
Yes,
what we use.
I actually have a dryer that mines Bitcoin.
We do.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty much it. I'll take one more question, and then if anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to talk to us. We're here all day. So, yes.
What are you looking at for standard output?
So there is a range of them. If you wanna
Yes,
go ahead,
the
Ryan.
smaller ones, like Westinghouse is making like a 1 megawatt reactor. The one that we're building at CNL is going to be 5 megawatts. The grid scale ones are going to be in the 200 to 300 megawatt range. So there's going to be, like out of the dozen that are being chosen right now, they run the whole gambit from 1 to 300. It varies between reactor types. Some of them are like a 2-year fuel cycle. The one that we're supposed to be demonstrating at CNL apparently has a 10-year life cycle. So so there's going to be, it'll be a lot better, especially for communities like Iqaluit. Instead of having to ship in diesel at complicated times of the year, they will be able to have that fuel available for for years, for decades, potentially.
So I can assume that they're not outright sold in some sort of lease agreement.
Yeah, that's typically that's how it's going to be operational at first, but I don't know the full aspects of how those markets are going to work, but
There's a lot going on in the space in terms of the regulations and things like that in order to give self-custody to those communities so that that's their SMR.
yeah, I would actually recommend.
They would have stake in that.
Yeah, I would actually recommend like at the COP27 conference right now in Egypt, where like last year nuclear power was kind of relegated to a corner, but now nuclear power is front and center, getting the main stage, and there's lots of good talks like this going on at that conference.
So, yeah, and that's all we have. So thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.